Comm 105, Fall 2015. Chapter 11, Campaigning. In this chapter, we will discuss social marketing and the ways that social marketers use new media to help send and promote their messages. For your consideration, what public health issues are you concerned about? How did you find out about them? How did you respond to this information? Where did social marketing come from? Why did people decide that they could sell behavior like they sell products? What are some of the challenges that come along with social marketing? Can you think of a time that you turned down an ad asking to change your behavior? Why? What should social marketers do in terms of placing their messages? Just what is a campaign? A campaign, according to communication scholars Ronald Rice and Charles Atkin, is a purposive attempt to inform or influence behavior in large audiences within a specified time period using an organized set of communication activities and featuring an array of mediated messages in multiple channels, generally to produce non-commercial benefits to individuals and society. As such, campaigns in this usage are not about selling products so much as they are about selling behaviors or ideas. In Chapter 10, we talked about some other forms of persuasion, which were more probably about selling products, but you can think about campaigns as altering behavior. Although you can be altering behavior in order to sell a product by getting someone to buy the product, which is a change of behavior, campaigns are more concerned with getting people to do different things. Some campaigns could include things such as encouraging organ donation or encouraging people to give blood. Rice and Atkins identified 10 principles for successful campaigns. 1. Understanding historical and cultural dimensions of your campaign. Campaigns don't exist in a vacuum. There's a history that's involved with any given issue. 2. Apply and extend relevant theory. Understand how the history that you know extends to your benefit and if there are any theories that could help you sell this behavior. 3. Understand the theoretical implications and interactions of campaign components, such as knowing how audiences might view the campaign. 4. Plan it out. Match objectives to the costs and benefits. Make sure each of the campaign goals are getting the resources that they need. 5. Formative evaluation. That is, you need to constantly measure how your campaign is doing. You can start this by measuring how your campaign is being received and continuing to measure it throughout the course of the campaign. 6. Audience analysis. Analyze and understand your audience. Think about who they are, how they might respond to this, and how they are responding to it. 7. Analyze and understand media choices. You've thought about your audience, so now you have to think about how you might use different media to reach them. Some media might be better at reaching certain audiences than others. For example, some older demographics may be less likely to use some new medias as some younger demographics. 8. Mix multiple media and interpersonal channels when cost effective. Our friends influence more than media. We know this from previous chapters. When possible, use interpersonal communication in addition to media alone. 9. Understand uses and contradictions of mass media. Think about how the media you are using might be better or worse at getting your message across. For example, should you use visual media or audio media? If your message is really complex, then perhaps text is the best way to relay your message. However, if your message is slightly simpler, you may be able to use images. 10. Identify reasonable criteria for campaign success and include a summative evaluation. That is, look back on the campaign and see if it worked. Evaluate it against the formative analysis that you conducted in Step 5. What is social marketing? It was brought up briefly in Chapter 10. Social marketing is the use of media persuasion practices to influence public thoughts, actions, and feelings. You can think of several different social marketing campaigns that you may have seen. For example, have you ever seen the This Is Your Brain on Drugs ad, where they crack an egg on a hot skillet? This is an example of a campaign. Social marketing is not a new phenomenon either. The War Advertising Council, known today as Ad Council, is a nonprofit organization that essentially founded social marketing by encouraging U.S. citizens to purchase war bonds during World War II. They were quite good at it, selling over $180 million worth of war bonds. Although Ad Council was highly successful at selling bonds, when it comes to public health campaigns, however, there have been some issues. First of all, changes in behavior that result in health improvements take a long time to manifest in the population. That is, it takes a long time to see the physical effects of an anti-smoking campaign affect public health. Think about it. A campaign that encourages people to stop smoking, even if extremely successful, would take a long time to see reduced deaths from lung cancer. Smokers would have to stop, which takes some time, and then would need time to recover and repair the damage smoking has done to their lungs, which takes even more time. Second, these campaigns are generally given the same amount of time to give their messages as other advertisers. It can be difficult to give a complex message in 10 or 15 seconds, while also engaging your audience with an entertaining or interesting ad. CMC in action. Hold the bacon fat. Fats make glycerin, and glycerin makes explosives. Every year, 2 billion pounds of waste kitchen fats are thrown away, enough glycerin for 10 billion rapid-fire cannon shells. A belt 150,000 miles long, 6 times around the Earth. A skillet of bacon grease is a little munitions factory. Did you know that Disney made ads to support the U.S. Army in World War II? The aforementioned quote is from a Disney short cartoon teaching people how to use bacon and other meat fats to help provide glycerin for the U.S. Army. Cartoons like this and other videos made during World War II were a big part of persuading the U.S. public to support the war effort by making small changes in their daily lives. The Ad Council has done a lot since World War II. Can you think of some of these ads that you may have seen that were produced by Ad Council, such as the campaign for Smokey the Bear, which was encouraging people to be safe when outdoors to prevent forest fires, ads for the United Negro College Fund, or the National Crime Prevention Council. It's not just Ad Council anymore either. Have you heard of UNICEF, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, or Truth? More and more non-government organizations have begun using social marketing to change public opinion as well since World War II. Some social marketing campaigns have been highly successful, much like Ad Council during World War II. MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, and Truth, an anti-tobacco campaign, have both had a big influence on public health. Mothers Against Drunk Driving has been responsible for the adoption of new laws and crackdowns on drunk driving, claiming to have saved thousands of lives that would have been claimed in vehicular accidents, while Truth claims to have prevented over 450,000 young adults from smoking. So why were these campaigns so successful, and why are others so unsuccessful? Why don't social marketing campaigns work, and when don't they work? In part it might be because we don't really understand the benefits of adopting a new behavior. We only see a 10 to 15 second clip. How are we supposed to change our opinion on a behavior that we've maybe been doing for a long time based on such a short little bit of information? It might also be because, as previously mentioned, all we get are short blurbs of information, and that might not always be the most effective way to communicate complex information about a topic. So social marketing just isn't that good at converting the stubborn. People who don't want to change probably aren't going to change. If we have been doing something for a long time, a short 10 to 15 second advertisement isn't going to get us to change our behaviors. On the other hand, social marketing is good at agenda setting, as discussed in Chapter 5. These campaigns don't tell us how to think about a certain issue or behavior, but rather what we should think about. Getting people thinking about a problem might also cause them to seek new information, which could then, in turn, potentially lead to people changing the behavior based on their own informed decisions. That is, social marketing serves to raise awareness about more than change behavior directly. Given that people who have already made up their minds aren't likely to change, social marketing seeks to provide information to the uninformed. It's here to get people thinking about an issue. Once you've been starting to think about it, then you can go out and start to gather your own information. This information you can then use to decide whether or not you really want to change your behavior. Most social marketing campaigns also have websites or different databanks of information that you can find that extend the information that you got from a 10 to 15 second advertisement. This way that if you are interested, you can go and find that information easily. Then, when armed with more information, you can think carefully about the issue and decide if you want to change your behavior. For example, what's the point of an inconvenient truth? It's a famous movie about global warming. Is this movie supposed to stop global warming, or supposed to get people thinking about global warming as an issue that affects them and the entire planet? So how does fear enter into campaigns? Have you ever seen an advertisement that used fear to scare you into doing something? There certainly are a lot of campaigns that try to do this. Have you ever seen the anti-smoking commercials with graphic images of people suffering from the various complications associated with smoking tobacco, such as laryngectomy? The extended parallel processing model describes the role of fear in how we process messages, and how we subsequently respond to those messages. We can be motivated by fear, but only when we think we have the ability to respond to it. That is, do we have the efficacy? There are two ways we can respond to a fear-inducing message, with a fear response or a danger response. A fear response means we run away from the message, while a danger response means we seek out behaviors to cope with the message. When we receive fear-inducing messages that change our thinking about a topic, we can respond by either running away or explaining it away, that's a fear response, or by changing our behaviors to match up with the new information, that's a danger response. The extended parallel processing model dictates that which response we use and engage in is based on our own self-efficacy. That is, do we believe we can make the change? For example, if you see a scary ad, and it frightens you, but you believe there's nothing you can do in order to mitigate this fear, or to get the scary thing to go away, then you'll engage in a fear response. You'll ignore the message. On the other hand, if you see a scary ad, and you believe there's something that you can do about it in order to affect change in your own life, then you probably will engage in a danger response. You'll face your fears, and come up with new changes in behavior so that you can no longer be afraid of whatever it was that scares you. When what we do doesn't match up with what we think, we experience something called cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is a psychologically uncomfortable state where we do one thing and think another. That is, we have a certain attitude about something, say smoking, but we're behaving another way, by actually smoking cigarettes. This is a psychologically uncomfortable state, and we have to change something about our behavior or our attitudes in order to make it less uncomfortable. So when we get new information that is contradictory to our previously held beliefs or our previously performed behavior, we either experience cognitive dissonance and then engage in changing the behavior, or in ignoring the information, and all in attempts to relieve our dissonance. Terror management theory further indicates that mortality salience, that is, making someone think about their own death, can actually be helpful in getting people to change their own health behaviors. When people think about their own death and think about how behaving in a certain way or engaging in a certain activity could lead to their death, they might be more likely to change that behavior because they're afraid. Here you can see the extended parallel processing model. First we have the stimuli, that's the message. Then you have how we process the message, using our self-efficacy and our response efficacy. Also our perceived threat. How we deal with a certain message is based on perceived threat, that is susceptibility and severity. If we don't think that we're susceptible to a message, for example, if we don't drink and we get an anti-drinking commercial, we probably won't really be too concerned with it because it's not really our concern. We're not susceptible to any negative effects of drinking alcohol. And then there's the severity. If we don't think that this is a very severe issue, then we might not pay attention to it. If we have low susceptibility or low severity, we won't perceive the message as a threat, and we won't engage in any individual response to that threat. However, if we do think we're susceptible, or we do think it's a severe issue, for example, global warming is something that affects everybody and is potentially extremely severe, then we are more likely to perceive a threat. Then we have our perceived efficacy. That is, how much self-efficacy do we have? Do we think that we can enact some sort of change over this message we just received? So once we have engaged in the perceived fear, then we have two methods of processing the information: protective motivation or defensive motivation. If we have efficacy, we'll engage in protective motivation, which then leads to adaptive changes. This is the danger control response. If we don't really have efficacy, then we engage in the defensive motivation, which leads to maladaptive changes, or this is called the fear control response. So you can see how you have two different ways of processing in different ads and different information based on your perceived threat and your perceived efficacy. How are campaigns affected by new media? Well, they allow for narrowcasting of campaign messages. That means that campaigns can be specifically targeted to individuals online. You might get specific ads on the side of your Facebook feed that are aimed just at you from a social marketing campaign. Social marketing can be used to teach people who are already interested in certain issues to help further educate them. We can also share these messages across our social networks. As we've learned in previous chapters, we know that we tend to want to do what our friends do, such as indicated in social proof. And we know that we tend to be influenced by our friends and our friends' friends. So when we see someone we know sharing a campaign message on a social networking site, we may be more likely to pay attention to that campaign only because our friends or our friends' friends showed it to us. Cognitive dissonance, as previously mentioned, can cause us to act irrationally in response to campaigns. Cognitive dissonance is a psychologically uncomfortable state, and when we experience it, we are always going to try to alleviate it. There are two ways to alleviate dissonance. We can either accept the information that we have seen or received from this campaign and change our behaviors, or we can reject the new information and maintain our old behaviors. Either way, attitudes and behaviors have to match up. That is, what we think and what we do have to be in line with one another. So for example, let's say you receive a message about how smoking cigarettes is unhealthy, but you smoke cigarettes. Now you are in an unpleasant tension state. There are two ways you can deal with this unpleasant state. First, you can decide to accept the new information that smoking cigarettes is unhealthy, and therefore change your behavior by cessation of smoking cigarettes. The other way you can process this information is by deciding that the message is incorrect or unconclusive, and therefore continue your previous behavior. Unlike the extended parallel processing model, terror management theory is concerned with mortality salience, not fear in general. We tend to be afraid of our own deaths, and we might be more likely to change our behaviors if we think not changing them will result in death. Chapter summary. The same principles used for selling commercial products can be used for social marketing. A little bit of fear is an important marketing tool for encouraging social change, or at least social awareness. Interactive media, such as social media, provide an opportunity for dialogue with, rather than shout at, targets of attitudinal or behavioral change. Questions for the crowd. Have you ever been scared by a public health message, such as a substance abuse advertisement? Or did you think the message was bogus? What aspects of the message led you to this reaction? Have you ever had a dialogue with a social marketer, such as a discussion on Facebook with a tobacco campaign? Share your answers to these questions on Twitter using the hashtag #MediaAsTool hashtag or in our official Facebook group linked below. You might even get an answer from the authors directly.